We're live.
All right, good morning. It is January 28th here in Senate Judiciary. We'll be hearing an update from RDAP. The quick note, I had to appear remotely due to a work obligation that required me being in person down here in Brattleboro. The reason I'm wearing a winter coat isn't because I'm eager to leave. I just forgot to turn the heat on in my office, just so folks know. And so Senator Norris can handle questions for folks in the room if any committee members raise their hand. And I will pass the floor to Susanna. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. For the record, Susanna Davis, Executive Director of Racial Equity, but today I join you all as a member of the Racial Disparities in the Criminal and Juvenile Justice Systems Advisory Panel, the RDAP. I appreciate you accommodating a remote appearance for me today. I didn't want to be that guy coming into your committee room sounding like this. And so today I am speaking to you on behalf of the RDAP and would just like to give you a few updates on what the panel has been working on and what it would like to set its sights on in the future that may be of relevance to you all. So first, organizationally, I'd like to give you an update on where the panel is. We have very enthusiastically welcomed 4 new members of the panel whom we are very excited to have, whom we believe will contribute to the overall well of knowledge and real passion for the issues. Those new members include Flor Diaz-Smith, Maggie Ganguly, Karen Vastine, and Mia Schultz. I know at least a couple of those names you are likely familiar with. As a group, these new members include people who have expertise in juvenile justice, in restorative justice, in education specifically, which we believe is an important ancillary subject matter that feeds criminal legal involvement, and as such is really important to have people with that lens. And of course, in general, advocacy and community organizing. So we're extremely excited to have them on board. We also remain without a chairperson, but the panel looks forward to electing a chair in the next 1 or 2 of our regular meetings. So that is where we are on membership and organization in general. I will say, just as an aside, it's been my observation that the group has been tremendously, I don't actually want to say discouraged. I think it's a mix of discouragement and motivation, actually, a strange mix of both of those ends of the spectrum. Seeing what's happening at the national scale related to issues of disparate outcomes in the criminal and juvenile justice systems. And I think that this group really is important for the state of Vermont to have at times like these, to be able to contribute to these national and state level dialogues. I hope you all agree. The next thing I wanted to share is that the panel has put forth its biennial report. You all should have received it. It was filed on the 15th of this month. And I just want to walk you through the major components of that report. It is divided into 3 main sections. That first section is a recitation, a review of past legislative actions that the legislature has taken that are aligned with or that perhaps sprang from RDAP recommendations. Things like raising the age and also the creation of the Division of Racial Justice Statistics. So that first part of the report acknowledges the legislature's advancement of those important policy aims. The next portion of the report is a renewal and recitation of other of our previous recommendations that we've made. This was a very careful decision because while it is always tempting to bring new recommendations and new ideas to the forefront each year, this panel felt very strongly that it stood by its reasoning from previous years and that we still thought that those issues were germane to the state and still deserve to be looked at. I want to be really clear, though, about what I've just said. We, as a group, stand by our report and our reasoning and want to uplift those previous recommendations from our 2024 and 2019 reports. Um, but I do also want to acknowledge that not every single one of those recommendations was made unanimously by the members of the group. And speaking just as one member, that's okay. I think that what that demonstrates is the complex nature of the topic areas, but we still genuinely believe that they should be grappled with, regardless um, of where some of our opinions are from our appointing organizations. So I wanted to say that and just give acknowledgement to the fact that we did wrestle with some of those issues and recommendations. And despite that, we still believe that they are worth the legislature giving renewed or continued attention to. The third part of the report highlights a specific recommendation that is a newer one, and this has brought itself forward. There is a bill that has been drafted to this point, and the RDEP looks forward to supporting it however it can through the legislative process. And this would be a proposal for the legislative body to employ the use of an impact assessment tool when considering new legislation. I believe that you all have heard us discuss something similar in the past. The executive branch does use an impact assessment tool and has since 2020. The RDAP, because of its nature as a board that is specifically designed to focus on identifying disparities in the state's justice systems, we believe that it's important that that work be carried out, yes, of course, by the panel, but also by those who are carrying out and, of course, creating the laws that are going to be binding our communities. And so we are looking forward to being able to provide more information and more support of that, but you will see a write-up of that brief at the end of this year's RDAP report. So those are the major components of that report. And I think my colleague from the Attorney General's office provided you some hard copies of that today. Mr. Chair, I'll pause here for questions. I did just have one other brief piece, but I know I've said kind of a lot just now, so I don't know if you want to pause me.
Oh, thank you. It's a great summary of the report. If you see me looking over here, I just have it up on another screen. That's why I'm looking over here. I don't have any initial questions, but I know there are a few brewing. I guess were there any questions in the room or anything? No? Okay. So if you have any additional testimony, or if Todd wanted to chime in as well, happy to hear some thoughts there. Any additional thoughts?
Yeah,
I
do have one question. On page 4, where just number 5, where it said reallocation of responsibility, there's a recommendation to implement decoupling mental health services in law enforcement engagement. I wonder if you could expand upon that somewhat, so that as to what that exactly means. What's the purpose here?
Yes, Senator. So I think that from different corners of our group and from the different appointing entities, you may hear a little bit of different idea about what that could or should look like. But in general, the idea of decoupling mental health services from law enforcement engagement speaks to a desire to de-escalate, or I don't even know the correct word, pre-de-escalate situations where people may have unnecessary contact with law enforcement during circumstances when what they're really experiencing is a need for perhaps medical or other forms of treatment. And so, of course, the report will dive deeper into it, but at its core, this would be a recommendation to reconsider how much we're really asking police to have to shoulder, and whether or not some of those duties are better suited for people who are professionals in the mental health space or other related arenas. This is something that would not only remove some burden from law enforcement officers in terms of having to be jacks of many trades, but also would rightly situate response to mental health crisis with mental health professionals, and would reduce the likelihood of disparate or potentially lethal contacts with the justice system, which tends to impact low-income communities, people living with disabilities, and people of color more often than other groups.
And thank you for that explanation. I was concerned or just had to inquire because in Franklin County, we have what's referred to as embedded clinicians riding with officers out there. And it appears to be a rather successful program. I don't want to trample on that. That's why I brought this question up here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that example, Senator. I think that's certainly one iteration of what this kind of a recommendation could look like. It's been done in different ways in different jurisdictions, and we would be very happy to provide additional information if it would be helpful to contextualize different ways that could be done.
Thank you.
I think a comment or maybe a question here, Susanna, is I can't find where I saw it earlier, but reference to the RDAP, the number of meetings you have and how it's challenging, understandably so, to keep up with the very rapid and chaotic pace of the legislature, once we all gather in January. And so I'm wondering if you have additional thoughts on how things can change for RDAP so that the group's job is easier and there can be better collaboration between the legislature and RDAP, especially once we get started and things become a bit more chaotic for everybody.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for bringing that up. We as a group recognize that there is a fiscal reason for setting caps on meetings allotted to different working groups during a year. And yet the group has found it to be constricting in terms of our ability to give our deliberations and our work as much time as it warrants to try to stick within that 10 meeting annual limit. And so one of the things that we would really like to see is a lifting of that cap so that the panel is empowered to make the decision about how much time we need to give to something so that we can come back to you all with really well-reasoned recommendations and other insights. I think that generally a common default tends to be monthly meetings for a lot of working groups. It's been my experience, the Office of Racial Equity sits on a whole lot of working groups, and over those years, the experience has been that the need to ramp up meeting cadence tends to precede submission of reports. Or if there are other emergent issues that come up, the group may need leeway. In addition, if we are to pursue a subcommittee model, which is something that the panel is very interested in, we're concerned that the meeting cap may end up being met much sooner in a year if subcommittees aren't supposed to be included in that as well. So I don't necessarily think that, and I would want to confer with the group to be sure, but I don't necessarily think that just looking for a monthly meeting option is necessarily the most effective, because I find that those needs tend to ebb and flow throughout a reporting cycle or throughout a year, depending on what else is going on. And in particular, as you mentioned, during legislative session, we want to be able to be responsive to you all, but we like to employ a deliberative approach that allows members to be heard, and we don't want to have to overrun that by not allowing for meeting time during the session.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the room or any additional testimony from Susanna, or should we hand it over to Todd?
I did have one other quick thing, and then I would welcome Todd to add or correct anything I've said. The last thing I wanted to mention was that the panel does watch the legislature, despite the logistical challenge sometimes it represents. And there are a few bills relevant to you all that I wanted to highlight that we have looked at and at one point or another shown an interest in. And these bills, most of them, if not all, you're familiar with already. Of course, S208 on proper law enforcement identification, S209 sensitive locations, a newer one, S190, well, S193 on forensic facility. And then there are a few that were not taken off the wall and did not originate in this chamber, but that the group did recently express some interest in conceptually, and those include H380, which is related to pretrial support programs and creation of a felony violation or felony penalty for violations of conditions of release. H382 related to data collection, and H361 related to civilian oversight. So those 6-ish are just one rough handful of bills that this group has demonstrated an interest in. And of course, there's a longer list that you all have been working on. But to the extent that you all find RDAP's input valuable, which of course I think is a given, but then I think we would be interested in being able to engage with you on them.
Absolutely. 208 and 209. I mean, I can start with those as we have taken them up here and we are working on them. I'm happy to welcome either testimony or any sort of analysis that RDEP wants to do, but then I also recognize you're constrained by the 1 month meeting, and I'm not sure off the top of my head when your next meeting might be regarding some of these bills. And at least it's my hope that 208 gets voted out either Friday or next week. So that's one of the pieces, but 209 and 193 are bills that we are continuing to work on and make some refinements to. But yes, overall, yes, we would certainly welcome your input on these bills that we're working on. So I guess what would be the best way to get your input on these bills?
I don't, if again, just a suggestion from one member. I don't want to speak on the group's behalf for certain, but our next meeting is the second Tuesday of February, which is going to be the 10th, which is past the date that you said you'd like to have this completed, at least on 1 or 2 of those bills. So I imagine that if the group is amenable, perhaps something in writing before your anticipated vote date would be helpful. But I also want to be mindful of open meeting laws and what it means for us to communicate as a group like that in a written setting. So I think we would have to have a discussion about it.
Are you able to represent whether or not RDEP has specific concerns or recommendations that they want to see, at least for 208, which is kind of on the shorter timeline of things, or just general support, opposition, anything like that?
No, I'm working really hard to separate my Office of Racial Equity temptation to speak on it and the RDAP one. So I will say no. I don't feel comfortable making a representation on the panel's behalf.
Okay.
Yet.
Understood. Okay. All right. Just taking some notes here. Any additional testimony, Susanna, or would you like to pass it to Todd?
Not from me. I would welcome if Todd had anything to add.
Thank you.
So it appears there's no further questions here, Chair, and our Assistant Attorney General is ready to go and anxious to get into the hot seat.
Sounds good. I see him lurking back there.
Good morning. The record, Todd Davis, Assistant Attorney General at the Vermont AG's office. I actually have not that Director Hicks' summary. Having to answer questions on the RDAP or other elements related to
I had one, and anybody else had the word. See, I got to find the page. RDAP's recommendation. It goes back to. I can't find it, but it was in reference to what I had mentioned with the director, and it also had to do with removing or the elimination of school resource officers.
So as Susanna testified, this section of the report is really a restatement of the 2024 recommendations from RDAP. And so I don't actually have was not on RDAP in 2024. So what I have to share with you is just what the 2024 report said. And as Susanna said, a lot of these recommendations were not unanimous recommendations. They were not consensus based. They were voted on it. So I can happy to get you a copy of the 2024 report, which actually has an entire table laying out the votes of every single member. So for example, your question on decoupling mental health, there were a number of abstentions from entities like the Attorney General's office and states attorneys, a bunch of different entities just didn't consent per se on that question. I can go back and also look on the school resources officer question, but I feel very confident that that was another recommendation where there were a certain number of yes votes, a certain number of abstentions, and I think possibly a few no votes as well. Essentially, it was to remove law enforcement personnel from schools in the school resource officer category.
So I'm wondering rather just if that's something you send or when he says on it, put it on our mini page here so people can see that. Absolutely, that'd be a great thing. So back to you, Chair Hirschman.
Thank you. So Todd, did you have any testimony that you wanted to add, or was it just questions? I couldn't fully hear when you sat down.
Apologies, Chair. No, I have nothing to add to what Director Davis said. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at the moment. I think, yeah, I don't have anything. Does the committee, anybody else have anything that they want to add, comments or questions?
It appears not.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for coming in and for your testimony and answering some of the questions that we had. I think this is a work in progress, and I know that in the past, collaboration and communication has been difficult, not for malicious reasons, but I think that as we mentioned at the beginning, once the session starts, it's very difficult to it's very difficult to stay in sync with a lot of the groups that are meeting outside of the session, especially when the meetings are only once a month and we're meeting constantly once January starts. So that's definitely something to contemplate as to how we want to improve that collaboration and communication. And it's definitely something that's very important to me. Senator Bohosky, I see your hand.
Absolutely. I share the chair's commitment to working on building that collaboration. And I wonder from both of you serving on the RDAP, Director Davis and Todd, if it would be helpful. I assume that those meetings are in statute to be once a month. Would it be helpful to have more frequent meetings? Or given your respective workloads, would that actually not be so helpful?
The statute does limit the panel to 10 meetings per year, and we have tended to structure them as monthly meetings with a break in the summertime. And the group, being a bunch of passionate nerds, would like to meet more often. I don't think that we have a specified number that we're looking at. I think we're just looking at quality rather than quantity and the ability to address issues as needed. So I think, speaking from my perspective as a member, just any sort of relaxation of that, recognizing, again, I do recognize that there's a sort of fiscal impact with the per diems, but if there's a way to have that broader leeway, particularly as we think about things like subcommittee structures, which is a bit newer for the group, then I think that would be helpful.
That's really helpful. I never want to put more work on you without you telling me that you might want that. I think, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think that type of structure of a board or commission would actually go to my other committee. And I'd be really happy to talk with the chair of that committee to have you come in and see if we have a vehicle at this point to perhaps grant some flexibility.
Thank you, Senator.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again to both of you. Committee, just as a heads up, we are voting tomorrow on the Supreme Court justices. Discussion starts at 10:35 and hopefully we'll be voting around 11:15, but obviously depending on how long or short the conversation might be. So just want to make sure that you all have that on your radar. Any other issues that we need to discuss before we adjourn? Generally speaking.
Not generally speaking, but once we go off live, I just got a question about the agenda for tomorrow.
For tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. If there's nothing else, committee or Emery, we can